Hello and welcome back to more Dragons Dogma 2 and the Things You Didn't Know series. As usual, we're covering the weird, interesting, and often useful things you might not have known in this massive game. Tons of things come from the community or the comments of these very videos, which we try to credit as best we can. So as always, thanks for all the support and the suggestions, but now let's just get started. First up, we have a very functional tip from David H in the comments. The mechanic you learn about early is the passing of time, and how that can actually affect your items. Fruit, for example, will start fresh, but then ripen and age, and eventually go rotten. When they're ripe, however, that's often a great time for different combinations to craft potent consumables and so on. This is particularly important if you ever find meat, because if you pass time intentionally and age it, that actually increases the potency of it when you consume it and cook it. I mean, why take a weak buff when you can just pass time and then get a better buff with so little effort? But the real tip here from David H is actually the opposite. What if you have something that you want to last, like flowers, or currently aged meat you don't want to eat at this exact moment, but you also don't want it to just rot. Instead of sleeping or passing time, resulting in said thing going to waste, instead first drop it on the ground before you pass the time. When you drop items on the ground, then camp or sleep or whatever, it isn't on your person while the time is passing. For some reason, the game needs the item to be on your person for it to actually age. It's like time doesn't take effect on it while it's not on you. So every time that you plan to skip time, you should choose to do this for anything like ripe fruit or aged meat so that you actually get value out of this. Personally, so much meat has gone to waste, I've let it rot because I didn't know this. So that's a very straightforward way to prevent wasted food and so on. So I really like this tip, David. But David also suggested something else in regards to camping. I never really thought about this, but it's obvious when you think about it for a second. You can camp just to cook. You don't have to sleep to morning or night to exit. You can actually just walk away from the camp, and that's how you exit the camping situation. I literally have never done this in my own gameplay until now for some reason. David referenced how he'd actually forget to do this in regards to combining or even dropping food before setting up camp, then felt stuck, now he's got to pass time. So yeah, you can exit camps by walking out. If you've got food on you and there's a camp nearby, you don't have to rest, you can just cook and then move on. It's funny how sometimes you just don't think of the most obvious stuff. Next up then, we're here in Vernworth on quite an early save. I'm playing a thief, and of course I'm using the Pilfer skill. Pilfer or plunder, when you upgrade it, allows you to steal items from enemies. But you have to knock them down or have them staggered before you can do it. It's something I've referenced being really good in the series before, like stealing fairy stones from, say, griffins and other enemies, and in general getting a lot more loot. What I'm specifically talking about is using it in towns, where we're not talking about robbing enemies or monsters, we're talking about robbing just normal NPCs, because for some reason there's no downside to doing this. You can run up and tackle them like so and try to steal them. If they've got nothing to steal like that guy, well then you're just out of luck. But there's nothing stopping you from running up to any NPC and trying to rob them. Because this is quite a weird world where there aren't really consequences, you can run up and try to rob anyone in town, especially merchants, which actually are likely to have something. I just stole this really potent health potion, recovering both stamina and health and curing all dehibs. That's ridiculous, and it cost me nothing compared to being quite expensive or awkward to get your hands on, especially early on a new save like this. A big part of the criticism for what happens in this game and, the story is that there isn't really consequences. The characters aren't real. The NPCs aren't very fleshed out. Obviously, that's a big part of the overarching story, but it does mean that all of these NPCs are just NPCs, just lifeless people that there's no consequence when you mess with them. So if you hadn't realized, you can just run up to anyone and basically rob them, and you might get something like that warming salve for absolutely no downside or cost. Thief wins again. You can literally rob Sven, which is absolutely ridiculous. No one's going to stop me from doing this. However, I was made aware that there are unique items that exist in the game that you can only get by stealing them, by pilfering and plundering. So I've come to Disa's chambers to, steal specifically from her. So let's just jump on her, let's plunder, and now we have it. The Salamander Mask, a completely unique item that, to my understanding, you can only get by stealing it from Disa specifically. The mask is specifically just a white or silver version of the one that you're given as part of the Masquerade quest. So I guess why it's unique is that it's specifically Disa's mask. If we really zoom in on it, you can see that it's not just a white mask, but it's actually kind of scaled, like a dragon scale, and it's slightly turning to red or vice versa. Obviously, the dragon theme is an important theme in this game, so I do think that's very intentional. It's a pretty cool design though, and to say that you can only uniquely get it by stealing from Deezer, I don't know, it's just a cool secret. Let me know if you know of any other unique items like this that you can only get by plundering and stealing from specific unique NPCs, that'd be cool. Next we have another pretty quick, useful one. The random pawns you meet on the road can be used as a 5th party member for a fight. When exploring the world, you're going to bump into traveling pawns, and in my experience, they're just usually some guy I run past, or worse, a guy that walks up and interrupts whatever I'm doing. Either way, you can make use of them in some good ways and for completely free. Just grab them, and then you can lift them up and take them to the next relevant encounter. They will help out as much as they can as if they're a part of the party, without having to first be recruited. It's a simple and very effective way to get some extra help or a distraction for the next group of enemies or whatever fight you're about to plan. Generally beyond that, I also like the idea of having one and just plopping them down next to a pack of enemies that I don't want to fight. I can leave this random pawn to hold their attention while I and my pawns just move on unimpeded. It doesn't have to be a traveling random pawn either. It can be any NPC that's able to fight. So something like a town guard or whatever's on hand will work. Just be wary of using any important NPC if you're going to leave them to die. Okay, so moving on, here's a counter helpful one. Much more interesting than it is helpful, because we're going to be destroying potential materials to do this. As referenced by the commenter Dig That Hole, you can actually destroy enemy bodies. Once you defeat them, you can use any relevant explosive or forceful impact even to damage the body. It'll leave impressive chunks exposed, revealing even bone and such. The fact they went to this level of detail to the point where you can mess with fallen enemies is incredible. It's kind of insane, but it's something I have noticed myself when fighting enemies and spells continue to fly post-kill. This happens the most for me with the meteor ultimate skill, not necessarily even cast by myself. I usually run a sorcerer for flair, right? But I also have my sorcerer running meteor in most cases. Unfortunately for me, but also interestingly, fallen bodies struck by these massive rocks of force post-kill will start to shatter and then completely destroy the body. We're talking completely smashed to bits here, which is insane. If you're destroying the body to such a degree where it's basically pulp, there's now one pretty big problem, and that's the materials. Obviously, when you're destroying the body, you're also mashing the materials. They're just gone. So that's why this is counter helpful, or maybe at least a warning for when you do cast these big spells and you need to know that this will happen. Still, it's interesting that they've done this for bodies and hitboxes post-kill. Okay, lastly, here's a technically useful, but more funny one I saw on Reddit today. As it turns out, you can throw animals. I covered this recently as a thing, right? How if you have a simple inclination pawn in the party, they'll excitedly prepare to catch an animal when you pick them up. So that means you can throw them to them and literally play catch with them. That could be throwing rabbits, goats, sheep, chickens, pigs, and more. It gets pretty silly if you and the pawn are strong enough for the bigger animals. But these animals can serve a relevant purpose in combat as well. Now, having a rock to throw can, say, stagger or interrupt an enemy if thrown at the right time or even the right place. Casters even create them mid-fight with, say, their ice spells, which can come in clutch for this kind of purpose. But here's the thing. These animals basically work the same as throwing a proper stone boulder, which means it can also interrupt or even stagger a big enemy. And that's universal. It seems to treat bigger animals the same as the smaller ones, which means you can throw something as small as a rabbit as if it's a proper big rock, as shown by this guy stopping a charging minotaur with one. This footage comes from the Reddit user Resublimation and is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Stopping a charging minotaur completely in its tracks by throwing a rabbit. Absolutely ridiculous, pretty useful in a pinch, and just fantastic mechanics at work. But yeah, a short and sweet episode today. Some interesting stuff like the unique mask item, weaponized animals, and so on. But if you guys have anything you'd like to add to, say, today's topics, or in general have something interesting or useful to suggest for the series as a whole, please let us know in the comments. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.